Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Hello again. I hope you're all well today, whether you're listening live or listening back to the podcast. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you all for following Teachers Talk Radio. We very much appreciate your support. We're really glad to have you with us on all our shows. Now, if you're joining us live, feel free to write in and ask questions, tell us where you are, or share your insight on today's topic. So in this fourth episode with a teacher from an international school in Kuwait, we'll be exploring active learning. Now, active learning is a classroom approach that keeps students engaged through memorable learning experiences. And just to clarify, though, it's not TPR. It is not total physical response, or rather, it's not only total physical response. It's really so much more than that. Active learning methods get students to actually engage with the content through activities that encourage them to think, to discuss, to investigate, to create new content or recreate content that they've been introduced to. And many of you will actually already be familiar with some of these activities. For instance, brainstorming a list of ideas in response to a question, concept mapping, or even think, pair, and share activities. So these and other similar activities are ideal for use in subject classes, but also in English language classes, especially in settings where your learners are still working on their language skills. We've had a couple of episodes about English as an additional language where young people are in schools studying through the medium of English, and English is not their home language. So I have with us now Tasneem. I can see that you're connected. Tasneem, how are you today?
Hi, good afternoon from Kuwait. I'm fine, thank you, miss. How are you?
I am fine, thank you. I'm fine. I'm really excited about this. I've got a little bit of a cold, so my voice will come and go. But I'm really glad that you could make it. I'm excited about the topic. I've heard about active learning. I've done some of the activities I've mentioned, like brainstorming or think, pair, share. But I never made the connection that this is what we call active learning. But before we go into that, Tasneem, can you please tell us where you are, who you are, what you do? Over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me for your show. So let me begin with introducing myself. I'm Tasneem Dalal, based in Kuwait. I have been an educator from past 24 years. Uh, I have taught, you can say, Indian curriculum, Canadian curriculum, as well as now I'm teaching American curriculum. Uh, I never took teaching or being an educator something like, because originally I'm from India. So for me, teaching or those things was supposed to be very de-glamorized profession where, you just see the teacher who's a sage on the stage who comes and gives, lectures, and that's done. Although coming from an educational background, like, being a granddaughter of someone who's like a renowned educator, I never got, into education. But when I got married and I came to Kuwait, and after my son, when he was in school, he was always targeted because he's a different kind of learner. So my all credit for my being whatever, my teaching methods and everything comes, I can just thank my son for that, because the way, as a parent, I used to feel the way he was getting, you can say that, he can't do this. He's just like, he's very naughty. He's very like hyper kid. So always he was being targeted. And so I decided that, how I feel as a mother, what other mothers would feel if the child is again getting the same comments every day. So as we said about acting learning, it all is thanks to my son.
Well, I mean,
My philosophy of education came thanks to my son, I would say.
yeah, I mean, you're not unlike many of the other guests that I've had, where a lot of what they're currently doing is a result of having a particular experience through their own children or through young people that they've worked with. And I found what you said at the beginning, from your previous teaching experience, is what we can also call that kind of that style, that frontal teaching, isn't it? That style of
Yeah.
frontal teaching. The teacher stands in front of the room and goes, right, everybody, today we're going to learn how to write an argumentative essay. And then the teacher just gives the input about that and then says, okay, now you've seen this here on the board, go off and write your essay. And it's not a style. It's not a style or an approach that is suitable, on the one hand, that is suitable to everybody. So it's not a one size fits all, because as we have heard, there are different types of learners. And secondly, I think especially with language learning, right? You need to give input, you need to have activities that learners will remember. It's not enough to, I mean, it's very poor if you stand in front of the blackboard or, whiteboard and draw a timeline and say, okay, this is a timeline and today we're going to learn about the present perfect. I mean, I know a lot of my students and they're not even young kids. They're 19. And as soon as I do that, they switch off because it's not memorable. It doesn't get them thinking or talking. So you were, introduced into active learning through your son. Tell us a little bit more. What did you do then, on the basis of that feedback where he was always singled out, he was told off for being fidgety and noisy and not paying attention. So how did you then get into active learning, or thought to yourself, there must be a different way of teaching?
As I said before, also that being a sage on the stage is what some of the uh, places, or it used to be during, at least during my time, when I was getting educated. So this was a method that was being used most of the time. And yes, as you said, we just had blackboard and teachers doing something, and you learn that. I, along with, it that time, this was the only way. I think that was the only thing I could learn. And when I had a son and who was getting in, that's the time you start realizing that what I learned, is it going to be working now after such a gap of years, of 20 years? Is it the same thing? Are we supposed to? Is there no innovations? Are we still the teachers who have like years old teaching method? Is that the way we have to continue? If we are doing that only, what are we doing new? Are we educators who are just going to go for years and years and old thing? Can't we make an innovation? And although all our, as we have said, active learning, that comes from, we have the psychologists and everyone who have come into like social constructivism, everything comes in. But did we apply in classroom? No, because active learning, again, sometimes it's like, oh, we have to form a group, we have to work in a group, or the kids will get into, the behavior would be a problem. Sometimes we do not want to take a risk. When we don't want to take a risk, we don't want to try a new method, what are we expecting from the students? And just blaming the students as we always got it for years and years. You have to try something new. You have to, like, you can't just say that, okay, when I have the group work, they're going to be chatty, they're going to be noisy. Think parent share, as we said before. Think parent share, yeah, let them think together. Sometimes I feel that, if I might have got a little fear that maybe my answer is right or wrong. But think parent share, I have the confidence to, like, I share with one person, and yeah, I get that confidence. I can do it. I have the feeling of I can do it. This is what active learning can tell and does. It's like I can do it, not that I have to. I can do it.
So it has that positive element, doesn't it? I like what you said, and the example that you picked up to begin with is that think, pair, and share. I think especially for learners, students, pupils whose first language isn't English, right? That first step, thinking, that first step allows them to kind of think about what they want to share, what they have to say about a particular topic, and then you pair them. That means they're talking to somebody else, and if it's a safe space, and like you say, that because they've been given the opportunity to think about what they want to say, when they pair up, they have something to say, and it really gives them this positive feeling, this feeling of achievement, and then having, confirmed their beliefs or shared their ideas with a partner, they then go into the bigger group and share in a bigger group, and then it's just buzzing. And I think that element, like I think you said it as well, that in class, kids always, they chat with each other, they get distracted. But I think the classroom, it's a very social setting. Kids come to school not just to learn, but they meet their friends, they build relationships, and things like that. So we have to give them that space.
Definitely. And I think, when we say that they interact with their peers, it's a social environment. And we stop that social environment, and English is alive. English or any other language is alive. You're teaching them to live. Through language, we teach them the life norms to live. For me, it's language is everything in life. If you learn the skills, language skills, you're a good listener. What we need in world, a good listener. You
Exactly.
read, you read, and you read around whatever it is. Even the basic thing you learn to read. Being a good listener is the best thing or the first thing to get educated. So if we are not ready to listen to our students, then we just stop them there and then. And being an educator is educating the child for the life. It's not only for that particular year or for that particular class. And we are lucky to be into teaching them language. Where we have the opportunity to build them as a human.
Yeah, and I mean, you teach them so many other skills. You're not teaching them the grammar or the vocabulary. You're not just teaching them to read or to listen. You're teaching them, through language. They learn or they acquire interpersonal skills, like you said, listening, right? And it's possible. I can imagine that in on any given day, kids, students, learners, they could be in a class and they may not necessarily want to listen to us, their instructors or their teachers, right? They might think, oh no, she's on again about this thing and I know this. But put them in a group, let's say in a think, pair, share activity, put them in a brainstorming activity. They'll make the effort, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
We usually see them make the effort to listen to their peers. They work together in meaning making activities, and they're practicing those language skills. I mean, yes, they need to have, to be able to sit still for a certain length of time. They need to be able to respect somebody else who's speaking, and sometimes that would be us, the teacher. But it's not just this hierarchy of us and them. And like you said, we're so lucky to be teaching language, because language is best acquired, and aspects of language are best remembered through active learning activities. You mentioned think, pair, share. We mentioned think, pair, share as one activity. Do you have another one that you use quite frequently?
It's about, again, project based learning. If where you involve, I can give you an example of like I had done this um, sci-fi genre story writing, and it was middle school. Middle school, how they are. And we already spoke about, when they change and their physical changes and every changes. And to have them to do sci-fi is not a genre which everyone enjoys. Like, personally, even I'm like, I'm not a sci-fi person. I don't want to watch that movie. So get them to into sci-fi. I used a project. I What we did was, we got into groups, collaboration. One other seas of 21st centuries, we got into collaboration. We had this groups in We worked in pairs, sorry, in groups, where students were given different activities for the story to come up with. First of all, we started like brainstorming. Now, everyone, I said, is not very good with sci-fi, myself personally. So I was like, here, the child got the opportunity to get the words, vocabs, and other things through his group members, got some ideas,
Mm-hmm.
brainstorming, got some ideas, like, okay, fine, you can do this. So, okay, let's come up with this. They created a graphic organizer. After that, we were just, okay, fine, now after that, you write the story. Let's as a group write a story. We have been teaching, when they come to middle school, they have learned what is a storytelling, how to write a story, the plot diagram, everything. Now it's a genre. So now let's create a story together. Now my story might not have some logic, but my partner found a logic in that and created, or enhanced it further. When it was enhanced further, you go on to, like, okay, fine, you wrote a story. Now what about doing it as a script? Now I'm teaching you, without them even like knowing it, they're learning grammar also by reported speech and quotation marks and everything. So you're doing that, okay, let's write a script. They wrote a script. Now this, they are actively doing all this without, and they thought, oh, this unit is fun because she's not just teaching us what to do on the board. She's not, it's not happening that we have to do certain things. We are working together. And then we had this thing about, why not perform it? Let's perform this whole story which you have written in a group. And they did the performance, and when they were performing, they realized that, oh, miss, can I get this prop? Can I borrow something from the lab? Can I do something? They were actively getting involved into things which was a sci-fi story. Which, if I would have said, okay, this is a requirement for a sci-fi story, we write a sci-fi story, these are the vocabularies, you need to have this vocabulary, you need to have different kind of, uh, maybe I would go further and say different kind of beginnings and this and that, and please write a story. I don't think I would have got those students who were actively there. I don't think they would have just learned and they would have forgotten. But
Mm-hmm.
as a teacher, we need to teach them something that's memorable.
So yeah, you've made that memorable, and what I thought was really interesting also is that it was a cycle of activities and you built upon it, right? It wasn't just, after you had the input, after they had the brainstorming and they wrote their story, it didn't just end there. It didn't just end there. And, you took it a step further with writing the script and then performing it. And then through that, collaborative project in the step where they were working on performing it, their problem solving skills
True.
took over, right? Their problem solving strategies where they started to think beyond the level of, that play or that script. They thought about the all the things that were involved or that we need when we put on a play, and then they used their language skills to communicate their needs with you. They use their language skills to solve, any problems they had with their partners in order to put up that performance. And like you said, it became memorable. They remembered it so much more than just input from you first. This is the genre of science fiction, and this is what we're going to do. you've provided them with that platform, that there was a cycle of activities that were interlinked. They had a lot of space, I think, also to talk to each other. And I'm sure whenever you listen in, you might have heard pockets where they weren't necessarily talking about the story, but they always came back to it, and they had a product for you at the end. How old were these middle school students?
Grade 8. So
Grade 8.
yeah,
Yeah.
so maybe 12, 13.
Mm.
And when you have this, as you said before, right, that communication, that even if I say 70% was not on the topic, but at least they were communicating, and that coming back to that 30%. But this has to be consistent, that not only that, okay, fine, you did this and then forget about collaboration, and you don't do the collaboration in other language or other subjects. I think it has to be an approach where everyone comes, like now every educator comes and like, okay, let's have this set approach, let's do some activity. Because if one class, one person, or one subject, this thing happens, and then for the next subject it's not done, that the consistency is the key to success, I feel. Like, even when you talk about personally before anything, we say, oh, you have to be consistent. If you want to do this, you have to be. So why not the students? You have to be consistent.
Yeah. And I suppose also what I do quite often in class, so I use some, I do have some active learning strategies. My favorite is the brainstorming that they do as a group. I do think parents share. And sometimes, right, sometimes the focus is on me when I provide them some kind of language input. And what I do, and as always, if you give the students their think, pair, share activity and get them to do a graphic organizer, and then you want to consolidate that information. So you bring the focus to you, and they're still talking, or they keep quiet for a little bit, and then while you're busy talking, they engage in their own conversations. And what I do then is, I don't dismiss it, and I don't diminish the importance of their conversations with their peers. But what I say to them is, I say, look, guys, it's my turn now. You'll have your turn to contribute later, but now just give me, 3 minutes of your life today. Just give me this time, because we want to put together what we've discovered about this particular language phenomenon. And I think, that has to be consistent as well. They have to know that there's a time for them to get active in speaking, in meaning making, in creation, and there's a time when I'm the active person.
I
And
completely agree with you. And
otherwise, you've got no control, right? Otherwise, you've
yeah,
got
and
no
you lose the
control of class.
control. But trust me, when you ask for that, okay, I need your 3 minutes, and that 3 minutes, they really pay attention. They would be like with you for that 3 minutes,
Yeah,
and you enjoy that.
yeah,
Like,
and
yeah,
and
finally, I got that.
yeah, and I think what what's important, what I find is two things when I do that with my students. It's the attention that I want from them on me is short. It's not, I need 30 minutes of your time. It's really short. I try and keep it in bite-sized pieces, because I would rather that my students are more, active in the learning themselves. So my input is in short chunks. That's the one thing. I forgot what the other thing was. Sorry.
You know that short chunks plays a vital role, because that short chunks comes as, like, you pop in and you pull back. You pop in, as you said, the consistency with the behavior and with everything is a key. So they know your rules. The rules are set in September when the year starts. They know the rules, but they feel special by, they feel like, okay, even we are heard. Now, who doesn't want to be heard? Be it student or be it us. So they feel that they are heard, and their things are even considered important. So they are allowed to talk, or they are allowed to discuss, which most of the time is like, no, classroom can't be a graveyard. I'm sorry to use that word. Can't have someone just being pin drop silent. They're humans, they're kids. They need to talk. We need to interact.
And also, I think at the end of the day, if we think about us, right, we remember things more when we are actively engaged with it. And it's no different. It's no different from, our audience, from our learners. Brings me back to what you said at the very, very beginning when you were talking about the think, pair, share. Was that where you say that they feel respected? So when we tell students, right, look, so they've done their first active learning activity, and then it's a little bit of input from us, and we ask them for our attention. And like I said, I tell them, look, I just need to tell you this, and then you can go back and work, follow up on whatever. They feel respected. They feel that their input, their contribution is valued, like what you said. We're going to look at more activities shortly, and I'd love to hear what other things you do, Tasneem. Thanks so much for sharing about Think, Pair, Share and your sci-fi problem-based learning activity. All right, be right back.
Imagine having your own instructional coach available 24/7. Now you can with the Teaching How-Tos platform. This highly personalised social platform empowers busy teachers to learn and apply evidence-based teaching techniques, either independently, working collaboratively with their peers, or with our new AI assistant. The platform features over 160 visual guides to teaching techniques, designed to help you quickly and easily implement high-impact practices that boost student engagement and improve learning outcomes. Join over 200 institutions worldwide that are elevating their teaching practices with the How-To app. No gurus, just practical support anytime you need it. Interested in finding out more? Visit teachinghowtos.com and register for our next webinar.
Empowering education with Easy4U, where innovation meets accessibility. Our subscription-based offering not only equips schools with cutting-edge devices, but revolutionizes the learning experience by eliminating financial barriers, streamlining support, and embracing technology. We're not just providing tools, we're shaping a future where every student can thrive, unburdened by limitations. Easy4U, transforming education, one device at a time. Find out more at www.easy4u.school.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading. Hi teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculum. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps for good. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
A lack of maintenance support is creating a two-tier higher education system, says a report in The Guardian. More than half of full-time students are working long hours in jobs to support themselves at university, according to a survey of UK undergraduates conducted by the Higher Education Policy Institute. The survey of 10,000 students found a record 56% had paid employment and were working an average of 14.5 hours per week. Experts said the lack of maintenance support was widening the divide between students who need to work to survive and their better-off peers who are free to concentrate on their studies. When combined with time spent attending lectures, classes and other study, students with part-time jobs are averaging a 48-hour working week, with some completing a 56-hour working week during term time. The average working time for adults in full-time jobs, according to the ONS, is just 36.6 hours per week. Higher Education Policy Institute's Rose Stevenson said the traditional model of higher education, with undergraduates studying full-time away from home, was becoming unattainable, and maintenance support would need to improve in order to support students with the cost of living. According to research, the cost of living crisis abruptly flipped the proportion of students mixing paid employment and full-time study. Before 2021, roughly 2/3 of students had no paid employment in term time. But this year, 56% of students said they had paid employment and were working longer hours than students in previous years. 3/4 said this was to meet their living costs, whilst 23% said it was to give financial support to families. 80% of students who had been in care were working in part-time jobs. The research also explored how working students completed their studies, with more being likely to use artificial intelligence programs and were more likely to view lectures online. Further details of the study and an additional report by the National Union of Students can be found online via the Guardian website. Money is also a feature in an article by Schools Week. It focuses on a response to a Conservative pledge to protect pupil funding in real terms. According to the Institute of Fiscal Studies, this could lead to the biggest school budget reduction for 50 years. The Conservative manifesto contains a promise to protect day-to-day school spending in real terms per pupil, but the IFS said this would work out as a £3.5 billion cut. This is because pupil numbers are due to fall by 400,000 by 2028. Meanwhile, Labour launched its manifesto with many media outlets covering its pledges on education. The National Education Union General Secretary welcomed the party's commitment to education, but said the proposals contained no indication that education cuts would be reversed. The NEU also expressed concern that Labour's pledge to recruit 6,500 teachers does not go far enough. The NASUWT union also commented on the recruitment pledge, saying it must go hand in hand with tackling the cause of the teacher retention crisis. Manifestos for all parties who have published them are available online. Away from the election, the BBC reports on an experiment undertaken by 10 teenagers from Salford. The teens swapped their smartphones for basic devices that could only make calls or send texts for a period of 5 days. The detox was run as part of a BBC project looking at the smartphone habits of young people. The report covers the positive impact the detox has, as well as the negatives. One of the participants dropped out after just 27 hours because not being online was really stressful. Some, however, found it liberating, as well as helping with sleep and engaging more with friends and family. Full details of the experiment and the responses of participants can be found on the BBC News website. Finally, as a follow-up on a story previously reported on Teachers Talk Radio News, Teesside University has announced it will help fund flights for Nigerian students hit by financial difficulties. Students from Nigeria were thrown off courses and ordered to leave the UK after a currency crisis left them struggling to pay tuition fees. The BBC Tees News website covered events and subsequent protests about the way students had been treated. This resulted in some intervention from the Nigerian government, but Teesside University has also told the BBC that it has re-enrolled some affected students and opened a travel fund, with a spokesperson saying, "We are working with a small group who do need to return to their home country and are opening an international relief fund to offer additional financial support for those unexpected travel costs." Some students have been told they can complete their studies from Nigeria or return to the UK at a later date to complete. Full details of the story can be found on the BBC News website, Teesside section. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News from Joe Fox.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
So, welcome back, everybody. We have Tasneem Dalal with us today. She's an educator, she's a teacher at an international school in Kuwait, and we have been talking about active learning strategies, or activities that encourage students, that encourage our learners to be more active, as the word says. So moving away from that passive learning, student comes in, looks at the teacher, looks at the board, and teacher just provides input. So very much the opposite of frontal teaching. One thing you mentioned, Tasneem, just now was you mentioned the phrase graphic organizer. I'd like to know more about this. How do you teach your students how to use graphic organizers, or how do you get them to use it? How do you introduce it to them? Over to you, and then I'll share how my students do it.
Thank you. Graphic organizer, I think, it's very important, because that's a place where you throw, or you just come up with your ideas and write your ideas there. The only thing sometimes the kids get into is, like, I just tell the students that please do not spend a lot of time in your graphic organizer. This is a place where you have ideas, jot down the ideas. Now, for there's no particular set of, like, I need this kind of graphic organizer for hamburger style, for storytelling, or anything. I'm like, even if you like the web, hamburger, or whichever, even if you want a blogs, just get your ideas. Just get your ideas, and remember, I'm not looking at your punctuations or anything here. I'm just at your ideas. So I don't mind phrases, but get your ideas. They were like, Miss, why do we not, like, can we not do the graphic organizer later? There are some students who have asked me that. I'm like, why would you do graphic organizer later? It's like, this is the idea what you have it, because while writing, there are times that you just get zoned off, or you're not with the ideas. So this is the best thing, that you jot down certain ideas, pick up the best what you want to take. Like, if I'm even for persuasive writing something, 3 reasons, write down 5 reasons.
But what do they look like, though? Because I have my students, right? If I say, okay, this is the topic we're going to do today, but before we go on, I'd like you to brainstorm with a partner everything you know about this particular topic, write it down. And what my students tend to do is they would write things down from top to bottom. So they would fill their notebooks, or they write on their iPads now, in a very linear fashion, top to bottom. And I have that for many different things. And they really struggle. They struggle to visualize. They struggle to put pen to paper, to put their ideas down in a style or in a method that's not top to bottom. Do you know what I mean? So, like, if I say, let's draw a mind map, like, they wouldn't draw a mind map. They'd only draw it if, let's say, I were to draw it, and then they'd copy mine and then follow around. Or like you mentioned, the hamburger, right? For the story or for the essay. See, mine wouldn't do that. Mine would think, oh, that's really childish. I mean, okay, yeah, fair enough. They're at university, but there can be other ways. Or when I did the KWL chart with the 3 columns, what I know, what I want to know, what I learned, they wouldn't do it like that. They want to do it from top to bottom. So how do you introduce students and show them, first of all, the value of noting their ideas down graphically in a different way from just top to bottom on their
As you said
pages?
that you need to show them first visually that, okay, these are the options you have. Either take it or web. Even for the writing, I think even the plot diagram works. Like, the plot diagrams as a graphic organizer would also work best, because there they know what to write for the introduction. what are the next event. I feel that is also the best, because when you're teaching the plot diagram, and then then they have to there are times we tell them to dissect a story, what was a rising action here. So even when the plot diagram, if I use that also as a graphic organizer, that can work. So you give them options. You give them options that, okay, this, but yes, as you said it, visually they need something that, not they go from linear manner, and they have that sorted out, even in the box way. Okay, what is going to be the first reason, or what is going to be the first event? Just in the first box you write here that, the second box you write the second reason, third reason. So they have multiple options. They choose whichever is comfortable for them, because I see most of the kids do a web one, which is like, they would do the web, and there,
It's quite standard, isn't it? The web
yeah,
one.
and they just love the web one. But there, I feel personally like, where are the sub reasons? If it's a persuasive, you give me the reasons, but your explanation, then it becomes too messy.
Yeah, and I find that especially with the web one, they struggle to go beyond the first level, right? I mean, if
Yes,
you can,
because that's the only web, that's the only circle they
yeah,
see.
exactly, because you have the one circle. If you can visualize it now, as you're listening to us, dear listeners, so you have the one circle. You have a concept or an idea or a question in the middle, and then you have all those legs going out. So some some of my students call it a mind map. They know it from school, and they only stay at that level. They don't go to, let's say, an idea that has come out of that and draw another circle, or circle that idea and draw a secondary web. They don't do that. So what you end up with is just this circle with so many legs sticking out of it, and the ideas are not connected. And that, for example, I find is not efficient, because it's not memorable. Then how do you dissect it? How do you determine what you want to keep, what you remember?
And I think more than anything, I think we need to tell them that how much time you spend on graphic organizer. There are times that they would take entire 30 to 40 minutes, because during that time, I feel you are not on that same topic then. But
But do they spend that time thinking, or do they
that's
spend
what.
that time drawing? Because my kids who've gone to school, as in my students who've done practicums in school, and they go to school and try and use some of the teaching strategies that we've taught them. They go to these young children and they say, okay, today we're going to talk about fairy tales, right? They draw a circle, the word fairy tale in the middle, and they ask the children that they're working with to, brainstorm, write down everything they know about fairy tales. And what tends to happen is that the children, or whoever it is, the participants, they spend more time drawing that mind map. You'll end up with a face, or they'll start playing with colors, and I think those are that's quite time wasting. So my question is always, well, if you're working on your mind map or your concept map, make sure you're actually working on it, and brainstorming is, I think, something that needs to be done quickly. Like, really, let's write down real quick what we know.
As you said quickly, it reminds me of this activity of quick write, where you just tell the student that I've learned from someone that, okay, you start the quick write, you have 3 minutes, and this is the topic. Write whatever you know about this topic. Just keep on writing. If you run out of the ideas, just write, I don't know what to write. And make sure you don't write that I don't know what to write quite a lot. Just write 1 or 2 times max. But you do not have to lift up your pencil or pen.
I've heard of that activity, yes.
And trust me, the kids who don't, I think before the graphic organizer, this would be the best, because when you're giving them not, they don't have any time limits or anything. They keep on thinking, and then that thinking is not only on the subject. They might think about many other things comes in their head. So the best would be, when you do this quick write, the first time you do it in 3 minutes, how many words? Now let's count how many words did you write. Miss, I wrote 30 words. Oh, Miss, I wrote 60. Okay, so you're asking like students who wrote 10 to words between 10 to 20, and then it just went on, and they feel very proud.
Would you make a competition out of it, or would you recommend, against it?
I wouldn't say competition, but
Because
just
it stresses them, doesn't it?
yes, I wouldn't say competition, but I would say, okay, fine, let's just raise your hand so they just feel. And they would say, Miss, can we do again? And when they ask for again, they keep on writing and they make sure that they don't write, and they are writing on subject. When we go around and you check, they don't write something which is out of the subject. They do write something on the subject. And that same activity can be taken, okay, how many times did you repeat that idea? Don't you think you have repeated the same thing again? Or haven't you seen that, okay, how many times did you write, I don't know what to write? So here they are now they're getting focused. Now they know what to do. And then we can introduce this, like, say, by the halftime, you introduce the graphic organizer.
And if you do it more than once, right? If you do it at regular intervals, I always tell my young people who are trained to be teachers, I always tell them, in any month where you're teaching that particular class, try and do not 50 different activities, one for every single session, but come back to activities that you've done before so that they become part of your teaching routine. I tell my students that. So I can imagine if you do that 3-minute writing, and you know what, maybe I will try that tomorrow with my students. You do the 3-minute writing and you can do it, in different sessions, and you always come back to it, because the more often you do it, the more familiar your learners will be about it. And you don't have to always, explain to them and, console them if they feel that they've not done it properly and things like that. And it becomes also part of their learning strategy. And I can also imagine that would also be a very good, end of class or end of session activity, 3 minutes.
3 minutes, that time when they are almost done with the class or almost done, that attention span is reducing. Or it can be the beginning also, where you need them to focus. We need to check which class they had before that. They just came from PE. Get them back is going to be a tough time. So let's have this activity.
Yeah, it helps to settle them. Exactly, settle them. Yeah. You were talking about graphic organizers, and I know that there are kind of lots of standard ones that everybody knows, right? Like, the mind map or the one with the KWL chart. I know one, interestingly, from my daughter's time in school when she was, she is still in secondary school, but when she was in lower secondary school in their language arts. So in German, we're in Germany. So for German, they had a series of lessons. It was in the curriculum. They were learning about fairy tales. And it's quite interesting because I learned so much about fairy tales. The teacher had actually presented them a worksheet. It was, I would say, it's a graphic organizer, because what he had the mountain. He drew a mountain, and you have the base of the mountain and the top of the mountain, and winding around that mountain was a road. And see, that's how good the graphic organizer is, because I actually remember this. So going around the mountain was this road, and to the left and to the right of the road were trees. Okay, little, tree, 4 trees together or 2 trees together. And my daughter explained to me that what you have at the bottom of the mountain is the main character. And the genre of the fairy tale is that you have a main character, and that character has a goal at the end. So at the end, there's, something that needs to be achieved, or something that, it's the goal. And this character goes up the mountain, on this windy, curvy road. And as she reads, my daughter, as she reads the fairy tale, she's supposed to identify the events that are secondary to the story. So not the main story, right? So if we imagine the story of Red Riding Hood, it's the one where you have this girl, she wears a red cape and she goes to visit her grandmother who's ill, right? So you have the picture, you draw Red Riding Hood at the bottom of the mountain, and as she going along the road, you draw, the different events. So she stops to pick flowers is one event. She meets the wolf who asks her where she's going is another, and on, along that road, all those secondary events. And at the top, the pinnacle, the peak is that the wolf eats the grandmother, and the father comes and kills the wolf, and the grandmother is rescued. And see, I remember that. And when I read fairy tales to my other child, I have that image of the mountain in my head. Like you say, graphic organizers make learning memorable.
And not only like as you were telling me, it just reminds me of storyboard, where you tell the student who are not good with writing and who are just like they're not, um, they love to draw something. So you just tell them, okay, can you draw the events in your story? Just draw the events, and as you said, the curve, just the lines which is going, a curved line which is going from top to bottom, and then okay, what happened at the beginning, then how? Just write a line after that. And they don't realize that they're doing graphic organizer, and
And
they
and at a
enjoy that.
particular age, they enjoy it very much. There's a particular age of students that simply love drawing. Drawing, whether it's drawing pictures, stick figures, lines, they just love it. They draw and they use colors, and they love cutting things up, and we should use that to our benefit,
And
really.
that, if you do a diagnostic assessment, it just comes as a DA, because they have there they might not spend time 5 minutes or 10 minutes. They spend more time because they're drawing, and they want whatever they visually see. There we are helping them to visualize their own stories.
And they're engaged. Comes back to that.
Completely engaged, because they're visualizing what they are seeing, what they see, and then it comes on the paper. And everyone can't, and they're second language learners. They can't. You can't expect them to have the beautiful vocabs and sentence structure, but they might be very good artists, and they have the ideas, they have the content. Yeah, the convention, writing convention. When you look at the rubrics, they lack there. We shouldn't forget about their ideas, their content. Sometimes what happens is, like, generally you look at some writing, you look at the amount of writing, you look at the words. I'm not saying that's wrong, that is necessary. But there are students, as at the beginning we said, that all one size does not fit all. So this learner should also be acknowledged for that ideas, content, which doesn't happen in a regular classroom. Like, he can't just write the proper sentences, can't frame the sentence well. Yeah, he needs to work, but acknowledge for the content.
Exactly. Acknowledge the effort, acknowledge the engagement, because what you could have, right? You could have something that's undesirable, which is just the learner just switching off, the learner just thinking, well, whatever I say seems to be wrong and nobody really cares. I mean, there's a time and a place. I have students who, when they do brainstorming, when they talk to each other, they're maybe not very articulate, and I accept that, because what they've done in the first instance is that they've contributed to the discussion, they've engaged with the topic, they've engaged with their peers. When it comes to the other genre, the written genres, or a formal presentation, then I say to them, look, I know you've got the ideas. I know you've got a lot of valuable things to say and to share. However, here, for your essay, as an example, I say to them, for your essay, my job is not to kind of interpret what you're trying to say. Your job, the purpose of your essay, is to convince me and to share with me your arguments. And to do that, you've got to work on those language skills. And, depending on what we were learning at the time, it's something that we do as a whole class. And I might remind the student, like, do you remember we did that when we talked about paragraphs, that you need to include evidence and this is how you do it, right? I refer back to that. Or I might say, okay, let's look at this together. Where are your problems? But I think what's important, and that's what active learning is also about, is to acknowledge that the students can engage and have something to share. It's very, very rare that you have a student who just doesn't have anything to say about anything.
I agree completely, because that communication, as you said it, that communication is a language communication where your sentence structure, your words, everything matters. But turning off that child at the beginning only because your writing is not good, but and not acknowledging the content or the ideas, would just we'll lose a child. We'll lose a child for that particular unit, because that child is already gone. He's just like, because we did not acknowledge whatever effort the kid had.
What you said there with we lose a child. I have a story from my daughter's elementary school, primary school years. She had a classmate who stayed back a year and joined her class. So he was in a different class. He was 1 year higher, and he really, really struggled in his language arts class. So first language is German, as I told you. Now he really struggled in that class, and because of those struggles, the class teacher and the parents decided that it would be better for him to do the year again. So he transferred then to my daughter's class. He went 1 year down. Now, I was speaking one day with the child's mother just to find out, right? Like, I've spoken to him. He seems bright enough. And she said to me that the problem in the language arts class was that they would do writing, poetry, creative writing, or also sometimes, factual paragraphs about this, that, and the other, right? Things that you do in the elementary school classroom, like you write about animals, you do a poster about, the planets and all that. And his mother said to me that the teacher would never display her son's work. So what they have is they have this kind of string that goes from end to end of, one end of the classroom to the other, and then you've got pegs and they'd hang up the children's work.
Yeah.
And so she said, the teacher never hung up her son's work. And I said, oh, why is that? Did you ever ask her? And she said she never did, but what she would do is she'd collect the children's work, and then she'd say, not just to her son, but to other children, she would say, well, your work isn't very good. Look, there's a lot of mistakes in your writing and so on. And then she would just not hang it up. So she would only hang up perfect work, so to speak. To say it very bluntly, she would only hang up stuff that was perfectly written. And that's quite detrimental, right? That's what you were saying, Tasneem.
This reminds me that I had this activity where we performed the students. I had taken 3 students who were ESL learners. They were the weakest in the class. And I'm sorry to say that, but yeah, they were not as the class level. We did a play with those kids. I took them out of the school. Like, sometimes you need to take them out of the air where they are more, like they are tagged or they are something uh, labeled. They went and they performed. It was a simple play. Those students got the confidence. They had the confidence to, those words of English, the dialogues, to read those dialogues. First, they memorized those dialogues, and then on the stage to perform in English for those students. I think that was a hats off. I really felt like I saw the confidence that they had. They were the ones who were like, always not asked in class, generally, like, okay, not only in class, like, It's a, I have seen this general practice, as you said it before, that only the top ones are taken every time. Only the ones who have done something good, the school or the teachers want to promote only those students. Why so? What about the other students? I think everyone needs to be acknowledged. Every student has to be acknowledged.
Every contribution. It's something I tell my trainee teachers. I tell them, I say, it's very easy. It's very, very easy to chase the right answers. You ask a question and you have a small group of students who put up their hands to answer it, right? Well, why'd you take them? You know they know the answer. You know that for these students, for these kids, the learning has happened. But what about those who've not put up their hands? Right? You need to find out. You don't just chase the right answers. It makes you feel good. You ask a question, you have your smart kid who answers it. You pat yourself on the back and you ask the next question. But that's not, that just doesn't work. And like we said at the very beginning of our show, is that we have so many different learning styles. We have different learners. We have more than just 5 kids in the room, or in my case, 5 students. We have to make sure, we will never, ever do right by every single child. But I think active learning methods will help us to engage a lot more students. We've got some messages from our sponsors, and then Tasneem, we're going to sum up with some tips and tricks and ideas for teachers.
Imagine having your own instructional coach available 24/7. Now you can with the Teaching How-Tos platform. This highly personalized social platform empowers busy teachers to learn and apply evidence-based teaching techniques, either independently, working collaboratively with their peers, or with our new AI assistant. The platform features over 160 visual guides to teaching techniques, designed to help you quickly and easily implement high-impact practices that boost student engagement and improve learning outcomes. Join over 200 institutions worldwide that are elevating their teaching practices with the How-To app. No gurus, just practical support anytime you need it. Interested in finding out more? Visit teachinghowtos.com and register for our next webinar.
Empowering education with Easy for You, where innovation meets accessibility. Our subscription-based offering not only equips schools with cutting-edge devices, but revolutionizes the learning experience by eliminating financial barriers, streamlining support, and embracing technology. We're not just providing tools, we're shaping a future where every student can thrive, unburdened by limitations. Easy for You, transforming education, one device at a time. Find out more at www.easyforyou.school.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading. Hi teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculum. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps for good. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org.
So we are on the last stretch of our show, and we've been talking about active learning methods, Tasneem shared about problem-based learning. We looked at, well, we didn't look, we talked about think, pair, share activities. We talked about graphic organizers. And now, Tasneem, I'd like to hear some advice from you. I personally, sometimes I do struggle with active learning activities or, things like that, because I think I have so much content to cover. It's just faster if I just stand there at the front and say, this is what I need you to do, and this is what I need you to know. So some advice from somebody who's been, doing active learning for so long and who's got lots of experience. Tasneem.
Coming back, I've learned this from Miss Suzanne Hilliard. Hilbert. So this is a thing that she, I learned doing it, is like use SPICE in your lesson plans. This is an acronym for some activity that is social, S for social, P for physical, I for intellectual, C for creative, E for emotional. Here, when you involve all that, you are actively, the student will be learning actively. Because social activity, as we spoke about peer learning, think, pair, and share, that comes in collaborative, project-based learning, and when even if it is a flipped classroom, so it's socially he's going up and standing and telling something. Physical, any activity which would be even a child moves out of his chair. Intellectual, definitely. Intellectual, because as you have to get the content, be a little bit creative with that. How can I change it? Emotional, look at the emotional part. Is the student going to be comfortable? Is he going to enjoy that? Is it going to be like enhancing his emotions by being involved in the class, being wanted in the class, which everyone will be feeling like accepted in the class? So having that in your, while creating your lesson plans, you keep this in mind. I think it enhances our active learning.
So that takes lesson planning to a whole new different level. It's a whole new different level, isn't it? Because what you're doing is you're moving from, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do this because this is in the curriculum. You're actually, having done that, having planned your content, you would then plan your activities. Like, if I'm teaching them argumentative writing, different aspects of argumentative writing, what are different active learning.
Debate and argumentative writing, having debates, group learning, those kinds of things can work wonders. Those kinds of things are going to make them involved, and we're just a facility. As I again would say that we do not have to be only the center of the the whole thing. We are not going to be the stage stage on the stage, sorry. We don't have to be that. Let them, it's their learning. We just have to guide them, navigate them, and let them participate actively. But
And
sometimes,
especially in language learning, right? Sorry to interrupt. Especially in language learning, we need to give them all those opportunities to use language, not just as they're completing their content, but to use language as they make meaning and negotiate meaning with their peers. They need to use language in that, social setting. And, like you said, we're not the center of their world.
yeah, because they have to be, it's their 8 hours in school. It's their being, you want them to be in school. So let them feel that this is their place. Let them not have that, okay, the IR. We spoke about it, the behavior, the consistency definitely is important. But once we have said that, once our class rules, once our expectation from students is all set, and they know that this is the way we are learning, I think we have less of behavior problems. And it wouldn't be, it might be stressful to create a lesson plan. It not stressful as in too much of stress, but it might be like, a little bit more if you're using the spice method. A little bit, you have to go into like what can be the social thing, what can be the physical, creative, and all that. But once it's done in classroom, you're just navigating.
it pays off.
It just pays off.
It pays off, and what you're saying also is, you have less behavioral problems. You have students who enjoy their lessons so much more. I think at the end of the day, what you get is perhaps students, kids, learners who look forward to coming to your classes, right? And that's what we want as educators. We don't want them, to hide around the corner and go, oh no, I don't want to go there. It's just boring again. But anyway, yeah, I'm so.
I think as we were growing up, we must have done that.
Oh, I did that all the time. But anyway, now that I've let that out of the bag, that's unfortunately all that we've got time for today. We have got many other shows this week. You can find them on ttradio.org. You can listen back to past shows on the website ttradio.org/listen back. And thank you, Tasneem, for being with us today. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. And maybe you'll use some active learning strategies in your next lessons.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.